Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial I'm going to show you how to paint cherry blossom branches with monarch butterflies. So I'm doing this on an 11 by 14 inch canvas panel. This design works on any canvas size, so feel free to use a different canvas size. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the three acrylic paint colors I'm loading on my palette are titanium white, bright aqua green, and turquoise blue. And I'll be using a 3/4 inch flat wash brush. So I'm going to paint the entire background. The background in this painting is a really pretty turquoise background, but it has a lot of blended colors in it. The white makes it nice, bright and pastel-y. The two different turquoises kind of contrast with each other because one is light, one is dark. So we're just going to kind of blend those colors together on the canvas using the 3/4 wash brush. And I'm going to try to get the middle part to be a little bit brighter than the outer part. So a lot of the turquoise blue, that darker turquoise, is on the outer parts, and then a lot of the lighter turquoise and the white is on the center part. But it doesn't have to be exact. You can kind of just spread the colors out everywhere. But when I do this type of background, I like to blend the colors, but I try not to over blend it. So I have a nice abstract variety of colors, and it's just fun because every time you do this kind of background, you can't mess it up, but it looks different every time, and it's just really relaxing to just let those colors blend. The titanium white blends nicely with the two blue colors. So you're just doing X strokes, kind of long, expressive strokes, and just kind of blending all those colors, letting them do their thing on the canvas, and trying not to over blend, because if I keep blending it all together, it's all going to turn the same color. So just fill your canvas up using this technique. If you need to let the paint spread a little bit better, like it's getting dry fast, you can add a little bit of water to the tip of the brush, not too much. You don't want it to start dripping down, but just a bit of water helps to smooth the paint, kind of thin it out, but also helps to blend and slow the drying time. I mentioned earlier that I'm going to add a little bit more of that turquoise blue on the outer parts, so that darker turquoise color is going to be kind of more blended on the edges and a little bit more white on the center part. And I'm going to go silent here for a bit while I finish this step. So it's basically the same technique, and we're filling up the entire canvas. You want to be careful if you want to go back and blend some colors. So I'm adding a little bit more of the turquoise over here on this side, but the under part of that has dried, so it's a little bit harder to blend. So if you're doing that, just be conscientious of the fact that the paint's drying really fast, so it would be harder to work some of the areas that have dried fast. So we're going to leave this like this, unblended. So I'm not going to keep working it. I'm just going to kind of leave it like that. We're going to let this dry and go on to the next step. So once it is dry, we're going to get a different brush ready. This is the number 8 round brush, and I'll be using Mars Black and Burnt Umber. So I'm going to demonstrate how to paint the branches. I'm using a round brush for the branches, but you don't have to use the round brush for the branches. If you don't like using the round brush for the branches, you can use an angle brush or a flat brush or whatever you feel the most comfortable with. You don't always have to use the exact same brush that I'm using. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wet the brush because I'm going to slightly thin this paint down with water because it's going to flow easy and I'm going to be able to control my stroke better to create this branch. So yes, about equal parts brown and black together. Load it on your number 8 round brush, and we're going to start on the left. We're going to create our branch on the bottom part of the painting, so bottom left part, probably about a couple inches from the bottom. And I'm going to start out by kind of pressing hard with my brush. It should flow. If it's not flowing, I recommend adding just a bit of water in there to get that to flow. So I was able to do that on one stroke without having to go reload. And we want our branch to get thin, and we want the base of it to be thick. So you want to kind of control the amount of pressure you're applying on your brush. So in order to do a thin stroke, you would press lighter, and then to get it to go thick, you press harder. So sometimes it's easy to go backwards, to start at the branch part that goes to a thinner point. Sometimes it's easier to start at the base. So right here, I'm starting at the tip and I'm pressing a little bit lighter, but then as I get to the base, I'm kind of pressing harder on the brush versus if I was doing it the opposite way. I start by pressing harder and then I release the pressure to make it go thin. So thick and thin, harder pressure creates a thicker stroke, lighter pressure using just the tip of the bristles creates a thinner stroke. So you want your branches to be thinner on the edges and thicker on the base, and that creates our branch technique style that we're going for. We're just going to continue to add some branches that are just kind of stemming off, creating a variety of thin and thickness on some of these branches. Cherry blossom trees have kind of a wavy sort of shape in their branches, so we can do that style. Instead of just making them straight, we can kind of make some of the smaller branches a little bit wavy and twisty looking, and you can do that by kind of wiggling your hand as you're painting the branch. So we're just going to keep painting little branches, and you do that just by using that tip of the brush. This number 8 round brush is very versatile because it has a very fine tip to the end of the bristles, but it's also a thicker brush, so I'm able to create some thicker strokes with it. So when you're done with your bottom branch, I did another branch up high. You can change the position of your branches if you want. If you wanted to sketch something out really quick and figure out how you want your branches to go, you can do that. Or definitely you can just follow me. So I did a branch in the upper right part, and this one's kind of dipping down, but same concept. The base is kind of thick and the tip is kind of thin. So to create those thinner ones, I'm using just the tip of the bristles, and I'm kind of wiggling my hand a little bit to create that texture, kind of twistiness in the branch. That one kind of dips down a little bit further. You kind of do a faster stroke to do those thin, twisty branches too. You kind of flick your hand faster. Let's add some more branches onto this one. Make the base kind of thicker and have it go up. You just keep adding onto it. The more branches we do, the more cherry blossoms are going to have to paint, but that's not a bad thing. So then we have another branch. The upper left part of our canvas starts on the side, and kind of the same thing. This branch is going a little bit flat, but then we have other pieces that branch out and kind of go downwards into the direction of the other branches. So again, you may find it easier to start at the tip and then go backwards, or you might find it easier to start at the base and go forwards, or you might do what I do and kind of do a combination of both. I'm going to go ahead and make the base of this one a little bit thicker with a little bit wavy edges, and same with this one. I'm also going to be adding some highlight to these branches, which is an optional step. If you don't want to do the highlights, you don't have to. You can keep it simple and let the branches be more of a silhouette style of branch. But to do the highlight, you'll want to load your palette with some fresh titanium white. And without rinsing the brush, I just grabbed that white and kind of meshed it together on the palette. It turned to kind of like a light grayish brown color. But I just went back over my branches. Now this brown black on the branch on the canvas is not dry, so it's allowing it to blend on the canvas. Also because I added a thicker base to the branches, so that allowed the paint to be wet again. But I'm just kind of painting textured strokes, kind of wavy textured strokes of that white, and it's kind of blending with that brown and creating some highlight and texture in those branches. You can see that it is a detail in this painting, and like I said, you can skip it if you're going to simplify this painting. Go back in a little bit more white and just do a few more strokes in there. Maybe the top part of the branches are a little bit lighter, so I can add a little bit more white on the top part. I'm not doing the smaller part of the branches. They're very tiny, and that would be kind of tedious to go in there and highlight all the tiny branches. But if you wanted to do that, you are welcome to. Just going in with some of this white, and maybe some of this part of the branch got hit with a little bit of highlight. Just going in there, just letting it blend. Just try not to be add too much white in there, because then our branch will become lighter and not have enough contrast with that blue background. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the cherry blossom part of this painting. So this is a very enjoyable part because we get to paint pretty pink flowers on our branches next. So I'm going to load my palette in a variety of different pinks. If you wanted to simplify this palette, you can probably just do this with medium magenta and white, but I decided to throw in primary red, which is a pinkish red color. Titanium white is always a staple for cherry blossom colors, and I threw in light pink. So medium magenta, light pink, primary red, and titanium white. And I did the cherry blossoms with a number 4 round brush, so a smaller brush that has more of a rounded tip to it versus that 8 round had more of a pointy tip. So you need something that has kind of a flat rounded tip. So you can start with any of those colors. I decided to start dark and then kind of work up and get lighter with the top layers. So I mixed medium magenta with red. It makes kind of a dark pink color. So with both of those colors, I load those on the tip of the brush. And instead of dots, I'm doing small strokes that almost look like ovals. I'm doing this on the tips of all the branches. So I'm just taking the brush and kind of putting some pressure on it and making a small stroke that's going kind of diagonally down. And I'm going to be building up and adding more layers of pink that overlap our first layer. So right now I'm adding more of the light pink, and it's blending with the other color because I didn't rinse my brush between the two pinks. So I started with the magenta and the primary red. Didn't rinse my brush when I went to the light pink, and didn't rinse my brush when I went to this white. So it's allowing it to blend and create so many different layers and different tints of pink. And that's how you can build that up to create that the different tones of pink in that we see in the branches. So you can add as many blossoms as you want, or if you want to add less blossoms, that's up to you. Basically, I did that on all my branches except for the bottom branch towards the right. So the bottom right, I will actually paint 5 petaled flowers in that area just to give it some variety. You can also paint little blossoms that have fallen off the branches, so not all of your strokes have to be touching the branches, and some of your blossom strokes could be touching some of the middle parts of the branches. They don't all have to be on the tips of the branches. Okay, so next I'm going to show you how I did the little 5 petaled flowers in the lower right. If you don't want to do it this way, you can just do the little strokes in this area instead of the little petals. So I did white mixed with pink, so it was a very light color, and I just painted 5 petals. So I'm just still using that 4 round brush and doing 5 petals. Okay, so just a very simple 5 petaled flower. You can grab one of your darker pinks, wipe that off because I had way too much paint on my brush right there. You can grab one of your darker pinks and you can outline the petals, or you can do little dots in the center just to give the center some darker color. So I'm just going to do this, a lot of 5 petaled flowers all in this area. So there's the little dots that I was talking about, little dots. And if you want to outline with the darker, you can. They're still tiny, so we don't have to make them look realistic or too detailed, but they look very pretty. You can add as many as you want in that area, and you can do a variety. So you can do some with the petaled flowers, but some are just the stroke. Maybe some of them are just buds of cherry blossoms that haven't bloomed yet. I only did the 5 petaled flowers in the lower right branch area. So this branch, it's kind of sticking up, that had the little strokes on it instead of the flowers. But as I said, you can adjust this the way that you want. If you wanted more 5 petaled flowers up in that area, you can. And also make sure to do little cherry blossoms that are kind of falling off of some of these branches as well. I'm just going back in and kind of adding more blossoms, more layers. And then we can always adjust this later after we put our butterflies in. We may find that we need to add some more in some areas. So we can always go back and add more blossoms. Next, I'm going to rinse the brush off, set it aside, and get a pencil. I'm going to be drawing the basic shape of each of our butterflies. There's 3 butterflies in this painting. So what I found really helpful for this is to observe pictures of monarch butterflies. You can just look into Google Images and just kind of look at the position of the different butterflies. So with this butterfly, I started with his head and abdomen. So I did a little circle and then the body shape, a little oval that kind of goes to a point. I did the top wing, almost like a heart shape, and it goes to the point at the bottom, and the bottom wing is kind of like a half of a heart shape. This goes to a tip, and the tip touches the circle of the head. So, and that line right there, I extended that out from the branch because he's going to be perched on this blossom. So I did little diagonal, little jagged lines for his legs. We only see 4 of his legs, and then the antennae. So I'm just kind of make that a little bit darker here. Maybe I can extend that out because I know that part will be filled in black later. So there's our first style of butterfly. So we have the butterfly where his wings are folded and he's perched on a branch. The other kind of butterfly I'm going to do is one that's flying in the air. So again, I'm going to start with the body and the circle for the head and the little oval that goes to a point for the abdomen. And then the wings, almost like you're drawing a heart. So 2 curved lines on each side of the head. This is going to curve downwards and go diagonally up towards the head again. I'm going to try to make it symmetrical so it curves downwards and goes diagonal up. This piece, like half a heart, has a tip to it that goes upwards. And then we can draw the antennae. And then I'm going to draw another one, upper right. Same kind as the one that I just drew, but it's going to be going kind of diagonally in a different direction. So I did the wings first on this one, the curvy wings, so the top part of the wing, and then the bottom wing is kind of like a teardrop shape. It kind of goes upwards. And then the circle for the head, antennae, and the abdomen. Feel free to draw more butterflies if you want, but I just did 3 in this painting. And what we're going to do next is we're going to paint our butterfly wings white first. That's going to allow the orange and yellows that we're going to add to the wings to be bright and have coverage over our blues, especially if there's darker blue in the underlayer of the painting. The white's going to allow it to white it out first. So I'm going to be using that, or I am using that number 4 round brush, and all I'm doing is painting the wings. So what I drew, I'm painting in. I find it helpful to outline that shape first. So I outlined the shape of the wing and then paint it in solid. So I'm just going to do that starting with our perched butterfly on the right and then move on to the other 2 butterflies as well. You don't need to paint the antennae or the body or head. In fact, I recommend that you don't. It's not necessary, and we don't want to kind of lose our drawing here. Just the wings. Next, you want this to dry. So take a break, come back, or get a blow dryer, dry that really quick because we're going to be adding the yellow and oranges and we don't want that white to mix with our yellow and orange at all. So make sure that white is completely dry before moving on to this step. I'm loading my palette with Cad Yellow Medium and Cad Orange Hue. I will also be using the number 4 round to do this. So I'm going to do a blended color on each of the wings, starting with the yellow. So basically, I'm going to paint my wings yellow next. So we painted our wings white. Now we're going to paint them yellow, and we'll be blending some orange in them. So I'll start with this guy, painting the wing, solid yellow, bottom wing, and we're going to do blending here, and I'm not going to move on to the next butterfly because I'm going to be blending this before it dries. I want this to be wet on wet blending, so by the time I paint the other ones and get back to this one, it would dry. So I don't want to do that. So yellow, yellow. Grab some orange on the tip of the brush, kind of mix it together a little bit. Start at the base of the wing and just kind of drag outwards and let it blend with the yellow. It's a really small area to work with, so it doesn't have to be perfect. So grab that orange, the base of that, and just drag it outwards towards the edge of the wing, and it's going to blend on the canvas. So ideally we want it to be a little bit darker orange in the middle and then get brighter and more yellow on the edges. If it doesn't do that, that's okay. We can just kind of let those colors do what they want to do. I can add more yellow in there if I want. And keep in mind, we'll be adding another layer later with some black designs on it after this dries. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for each of the butterflies. You can choose to rinse your brush and start over, or you can be like me and not rinse the brush. So with this first layer, I still have a little bit of orange on my brush, so it didn't turn out to be exactly yellow, but that's okay. With this butterfly, I can have a little bit more orange in it, and that's okay. So I'm doing the same thing. I started with yellow, and then I grabbed the orange and I did the orange on the base of it and dragged it out to let it blend into the yellow. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this butterfly on the left. This one ended up being a lot more orange than the other one. And that's okay. If we want it to be a little bit different from the other guys, we can have different variations. In fact, I just decided to go ahead and do a lot more orange on this one. Next, we're going to load some fresh Mars Black on our palette and switch back to we're still going to be using our number 4 round brush actually. And I'm going to be using this brush to paint the head and abdomen of the butterfly. So starting with this little guy that's perched. And I will be switching to a POSCA paint pen. So the black paint pen is very helpful in this because our butterflies are so little and we have these little tiny legs and antennae. It's much easier to do it with this paint pen. You can also do this with a little tiny detail round brush if you don't want to use the paint pen or if you don't have a paint pen. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the little antennae. They're a little bit thicker at the tip and thinner for the line. And you can also use this paint pen, so you can just not use the Mars Black and the brush. You can just use the paint pen for all the designs and the legs and the antennae, or you can switch back and forth. So I found it better to switch back and forth, but that was just me. So I'm going to do the head and the antennae on this one. So a thin line and then a kind of a thicker dot at the end. And the body of the butterfly, it's going to kind of dip down a little bit very thin. You still need kind of a steady hand with this paint pen because these are little fine detailed lines. I also found that if your paint is not dry all the way, if you're painting over something with a paint pen, it's not going to work as well versus if it's dry. So make sure that your painting is dry, otherwise it'll start buckling up the paint and not working as well. I'm just going to switch to that brush right here in this area. So some of the thicker strokes I used the brush. So I did that, and then we're going to be doing the designs on our wings. So this is really going to make it look like a monarch butterfly. So I'm back to my 4-round. So for our wing designs, I started by very slightly outlining the shape of the wing. The edges, the far edges, the stroke is a little bit thicker. So thin stroke along the outline of the wing. Press a little bit harder to get that thicker on the edges of the wing. So the thickness and thinness level of your stroke kind of varies. I'm going to kind of repeat this over here for our butterfly on the left. So we're going to do kind of a thicker stroke on the edge, far left edge of this wing, and the top edge and the inner part of the wing is a thinner stroke. So it kind of helps to maybe add a little bit of water to your black so that it flows nicely. And again, you can do this with the paint pen if you feel like this step would be much easier to control with your paint pen. That is something you can do instead. So thicker on the edges, but thinner on the top part of the edge. That black provides such pretty contrast with the orange. And then I'm going to do the same thing to our other butterfly that's at the top. A little bit of water on the brush, kind of twist it to really get that paint right there on the tip of the brush. That way it's easier to control. Thinner on the bottom and top, thicker on the left part. So you want to kind of control how you're pressing on the brush to create the different thickness in your stroke. So thicker on the edges, thinner at the top. And then I'm going to do the same thing for our bottom wings. It's going to start out thin, it's going to get thick where that curve is, and then it's going to get thin again. So for our inner part of the wing designs, I used the paint pen. So I'm setting the round brush aside, grabbing our paint pen. Again, make sure your orange and yellows are dry, otherwise this won't work as effectively. So I did 2 little kind of curved stretch shapes and then diagonal lines that kind of go towards the wings. Then I'm going to repeat this for our other butterfly over on the left. So same thing with the paint pen. I'm going to start with a curve, stretched curve, oval, elliptical shape. I'm going to do 2 on the top wings. And then I'll do 1 on our bottom set of wings. You could have it touch all the way, or you can kind of let that run out. And then little diagonal lines that go to the ends of our wings. And then we'll go ahead and repeat that for our top butterfly. So our curvy shape, I just had room for 1 in this one, but if you wanted to do 2, you can do 2, and then 1 down here, and then our diagonal lines that go outwards from those shapes to the edges of our wings. So 3 diagonal lines to on the top. And then we can also use our paint pen to touch up our wings if needed. So next we're going to take our little detailed butterflies a step further and do the little white dots. So I'm going to be using the 4 round for this and titanium white. If you have a white paint pen, that could also work for this, but the brush did a pretty good job. So all I'm doing with the white is doing little white dots where that black paint is, little white dots along that black border that's on the end of the butterfly's wings. He also has some little white dots on his body and the little white dots on the head area, which you don't have to do, but it does provide some really pretty detailed contrast against the black. Definitely make sure your black is dry. If your white's mixing with the black, you may have to dry that real quick and come back. But this guy, again, little white dots all along the black border. And I'm going to do that again for this side. Such a pretty detail. And then along the bottom and on the top. So wherever there's a black border, I'm doing the little white dots. And little white dots up here, little white dots on the body. You can vary the dots. So some of them are bigger, some are smaller. They don't all have to be the same size. And then the little white dots on this butterfly as well. I almost decided to do at least one more butterfly in this painting, but instead I did another branch in this area and I went in and added some more cherry blossoms because I just felt like it needed some more cherry blossoms. They're very pretty. So on the right, I did a few more of the petaled cherry blossoms, and I also did some more cherry blossom petals that are kind of falling off of the tree. So our cherry blossoms don't all have to be touching the branches, or we can do more blossoms and then paint branches that are going towards them. So I'm doing another little petaled flower over here. If you don't want to do all these final touch-ups, you don't have to. You can call your painting finished. A lot of times it's hard to decide if our painting is finished or not. There's no real formula to tell us it's finished. It just kind of, sometimes we just have to decide and walk away. A lot of times if I'm struggling with knowing if my painting is finished or not, is to stop. And sometimes it's hard to stop myself, but to stop, put the painting aside, come back maybe a day later, look at it, and then decide if it's finished, because a lot of times we can see our painting from a new perspective after not looking at it for so long. So that's an option, but I definitely enjoy painting little cherry blossom flowers, so I did this. And I also did little blossom buds kind of all over. Some are attached to some of the middle parts of the branches. Some are falling down off of the branches, so kind of everywhere. And last but not least, I decided to do another branch that's hanging down in the bottom area. So I went back to my 8 round brush and the brown and the black combination. Had a branch kind of dip down over here. This was the area where I thought about adding another butterfly. Still could possibly be a good place for another butterfly, but I decided to just keep it simple with the branch and the blossom. So I did the branch, I went back with the highlight, and then I went back with the pinks and added more blossoms to that as well. I did some more 5-petaled flowers on this branch down here, as well as just the little simple strokes. This is the conclusion of how to paint cherry blossom branches with monarch butterflies. I hope that you enjoyed this really pretty simple spring painting tutorial. Thanks for watching, and thanks for painting with me.